Really excited. Oh, we're getting recorded. Really excited to see y'all here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll let them introduce themselves, but we're also joined by Charlie and Philip from the TA team. We're going to provide an overview of the 15 mile per hour e-bike rule and the hearing, and provide some talking points and messaging that y'all may use. So I'm going to go ahead and move to, here we go. I'm going to give you the overview, go into the details on the 15 mile per hour proposal, speak about the logistics of the hearing, as you said, and we'll have some questions if whether or not answered within the agenda itself. Feel free to put your questions within the Q&A and the chat as we go. And our team will do our best to answer them as they come up, or we can chat a little bit more at the end. So really do appreciate y'all for being here tonight. Okay, so we're gonna start with putting this rule into context. A lot of things have happened recently. They're all kind of swirling around each other and interplay with each other. So we're trying to make sense of it all and give y'all the best information on what's currently at stake and how they affect each other. And that is many of y'all aware of the change in policy regarding giving criminal summonses to cyclists versus a traffic violation. And then I'll also just pinpoint the difference between this 50 mile per hour proposed rule and the bill sponsored by Keith Powers that was introduced recently as well. And just to highlight as we go into this, that many of y'all have noted, a that City Bike has adopted the 15 mile per hour speed change recently. Okay, so just to kick us off here, in a drastic policy change in May, NYPD announced that they are now giving out criminal summonses to people on bikes instead of typical traffic tickets. What that means for folks is that car drivers are still going to continue to receive traffic tickets for their offenses. And to put it in perspective, unlike traffic tickets, which involve a fine that can be paid online or by mail, criminal summonses require taking time off work or finding childcare to attend court or entering a legal system where there's a risk of arrest, time in jail waiting trial, and in recent times, even deportation. And this is the legalese language of the proposed rule. Very wordily that no person shall operate a bicycle with electric assist, electric scooter, et cetera, at a speed greater than 15 miles per hour, except where official signs indicate a different speed. But basically, what that means is that the Adams administration is proposing a rule to cap e-bike speeds at 15 miles per hour. And that is a move that threatens delivery workers, commuters, and anyone who bikes in the city. And for a variety of reasons, TA believes this rule is half-baked and ill-conceived. And we have numerous questions about what that means, how it's possible. We have a variety of issues. So under our first bubble of can they even do this? City Hall has identified no legal precedent for having different speed limits on different lanes of a road or different vehicle classifications, meaning a car and a bike are both in the same road space and both have different speed limits. There are also a lot of questions about implementation. We have concerns that this rule sets up cyclists to fail and that it's, one, hard to distinguish between an e-bike and an acoustic bike. A lot of folks on quote unquote a regular bike are also able to exceed 15 miles per hour speeds. And how will NYPD even determine who is speeding? Most bikes of all types typically do not have speedometers, and determining the speed of that bike is in question. And then we have a lot of concerns about the safety of this proposal. Now we know that basic practices say that 20 miles per hour is plenty. This is why we push for everybody on the road to not go higher than 20 miles per hour. But in essence, if we're making this change based off of like weights and the difference in concerns about different vehicles, that a person on a 50-pound e-bike could get sent to criminal court or risk arrest for going 16 miles per hour on the same street and in the same lane as someone who's in a 5,000-pound SUV that could speed 40 miles per hour through a red light and only get a traffic violation. And as always, we believe the city should be focusing on real solutions, real safety, street safety improvements that work, starting with regulating the delivery app companies, and better street design, dedicated space for e-bikes so that everybody gets their own space on the road, and also focusing things on point of sale, for example, so that what's available to be bought goes at safe speeds and not policies that scapegoat individual cyclists and put them at risk. So that is a brief overview of the concerns and issues we've seen with this proposed rule. And I will pass it to Charlie to tell us a little bit more about what this means for July 14th on the hearing.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining today. Okay, so yeah, we kind of talked about the context now, and now, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, there is this virtual rule hearing coming up on July 14th, and we are here to help you prepare to submit comment that can be considered at that hearing. Next slide, please. Okay, so some of you may have participated in city council, bill consideration hearings before, and so I just want to be clear up front that this is a very different thing. This hearing is virtual only. It's conducted differently than when a bill is being considered at the city council. There is, in fact, no discussion, questions, or testimony from council members or from city agencies. This is solely intended to receive public comment from the public, that's you, from Zoom or over the phone. And it's also typically not live streamed. And it's occurring on July 14th between 10 a.m. and 11:30. And next slide, please. Great. So we're all here because we care deeply about this issue and we want to take action. So we're here to help you make your voice heard by July 14th. So the first thing you can do is submit a comment. We have a page set up on the website. I'm dropping in the chat right here. I believe I've actually just sent it to the host. So let me put it in there for everybody. So this is a convenient landing page we created where you can, read some context, see some sample testimony, and click a link to give your public comment on the city's rules page. Another thing you can do is actually send your comment via email directly to the city. And then most importantly, you can actually join this virtual meeting at 10 a.m. on July 14th and provide your comment during the rules hearing. And lastly, city council sentiment on this issue is going to be really critical in terms of moving the needle. So we actually have a petition where you can tell your council member directly that we do not want a 15 mile per hour speed limit on e-bikes. Next slide, please. Great. So, there are many ways to talk about this issue, right? And I'm sure each of you are here because you probably have personal experience, riding a bike and what that's like feeling endangered by drivers that are going next to you, right? And speeding and putting you in danger and acting entitled, et cetera, right? We all have had this experience. So I think that your personal experience is going to be really critical here. And in fact, it's probably going to be more significant than if everyone just kind of copy and pasted the same language, right? That being said, we have some kind of sample talking points that you can pull from. So here's one of them. I'm strongly opposed to the proposed rule to limit e-bikes to a 50-mile-per-hour speed limit because it's illogical and it could put New Yorkers at risk of a criminal record or entrapment in President Trump's immigration dragnet, right? So that's the overcriminalization angle. That's the immigration crackdown angle. Here's another one. Statistically, people on bikes in New York City cause few crashes and almost no fatalities. People in cars and trucks, on the other hand, cause tens of thousands of crashes and kill more than 100 New Yorkers every year. So it's wildly illogical to require the former to travel at 15 miles per hour with potential criminal penalties, while in the very same lanes, an SUV can drive 35 miles per hour without so much as a speeding ticket, right? So that is the angle that, this is disproportionate. This is not actually based in statistical realities, right? This is just totally illogical. And, for that reason, it doesn't make sense. So, point three, criminalizing biking will not make us safer. It will discourage biking, which research shows makes streets less safe for all users, and it will put New Yorkers at risk of a criminal record, the threat of deportation, or worse, right? There are so many different talking points that you can kind of uh, paste together, use your own kind of feelings and experience on this same subject. And, essentially, we just want as many people as possible weighing in on this so that the city understands that actually public opinion is not on the city's side on this issue. Public opinion is, in fact, very opposed to this rule change. Next slide, please. Great. So here's some more talking points, that you can pull from to make New York City's streets safe. We don't need to criminalize biking. We instead need to build dedicated, protected infrastructure for people on bikes because that is actually what's going to dramatically reduce, biking on the sidewalk, right? People are worried about biking on the sidewalk, but how do we fix that? That's actually going to be happening through infrastructure changes, not through overcriminalization, right? Another thing that we at TA believe is that there should be one universal speed limit, right? It doesn't make sense for bikes to be limited to 15 miles per hour, but a car can go, much more than that, right? Everybody, no matter what type of vehicle they're operating, whether it's, using their own 2 feet or whether it's stepping on the gas, that should be limited to 20 miles per hour, no matter how you're getting around, right? So that's another thing we believe. And as Nina mentioned earlier, another angle here is that we want to advance regulations on the delivery app companies because, frankly, these are companies based in Silicon Valley that are, you know, creating enormous profit from the streets of New York City. And so far, they've gone totally unregulated. So it should be the city's responsibility to ensure safe streets and not allow these companies to kind of operate with impunity and exploit their delivery workers, right? And lastly, you could just say, something as simple as, I say no to special speed limits for cyclists and no to police crackdowns that unfairly target and punish people on bikes because biking is not a crime. Next slide, please. All right, I think at this point we have come to the end of our presentation and we can start handling some questions. So let us take a look at the chat here. Cool, so I saw there was one question about whether this means an ID, this potential rule change means an ID would be required to ride a bike. And Philip from our research team responded that no, you're not required to have an ID when biking in New York City, but if you're stopped by the police, they can ask for your name and address. And if you refuse to provide this information or cannot prove your identity, they can detain you / ask you to go with them to the precinct until they can verify who you are, which of course, at the very least, that's a huge inconvenience, right? And in worse scenarios, it's worse than that. So that's one of the many reasons, we want to push back on this proposed rule. So, also I'm seeing some questions about different classes of e-bikes, right? So as some of you may or may not be aware, um, there are different types of e-bikes, right? There's class one, class two, and class three. Class three are currently actually capable of going above 20 miles per hour, but while class one and class two uh, cannot exceed that 20 miles per hour throttle limit. So one thing that is currently, being considered at the city council level is a kind of like point of sale restriction, right? So if there were to be a restriction on the sale of class three e-bikes, um, the e-bikes actually have a very short lifespan when they're used for delivery work. So if you were to implement a class three ban at the point of sale, again, we wouldn't want we wouldn't want enforcement at the street level and people, being questioned about what class of bike they're riding. I mean, that would be totally absurd. So the way to do that would actually be to just change which bikes would be allowed to be sold. And naturally, over time, if you banned the sale of class three bikes, only class one and two would be on the street. And that would mean that all e-bikes would be going at a maximum speed of 20 miles per hour. And that would just kind of happen naturally if you imposed that point of sale restriction, and you wouldn't need any actual street level enforcement. Yeah, I'm seeing a great question from Nicole in the chat saying it seems like folks could use more specific details as to how delivery app regulation impacts bike usage in New York City because delivery drivers are rewarded or punished based on how fast they deliver. This is why they drive on the sidewalks and against traffic. I mean, that's absolutely correct. They, these delivery workers are being incentivized and sometimes outright required to travel at speeds that are not safe for them or not safe for other people on the street. And that's because the city has allowed these companies to create those incentives and to create those restrictions and to actually threaten their workers with deactivation. Deactivation meaning that if you don't complete deliveries in this specific, very unrealistic, frankly, time frame, then you will be deactivated from this app, and you will no longer be allowed to, you know, make any money delivering with this specific company. And that is, frankly, that's exploitation, and that is something that needs to be addressed with city council legislation so that there are actual deactivation protections and these workers are not being forced to travel at unsafe speeds. Right, exactly. Everyone wants, you order food, you want it as fast as possible. It's in the company's uh, interest of profit to get that to you as close to instantly as possible. But that's not actually in the public's interest. And that's not actually in the interest of these delivery workers, right? So that is a kind of externality that needs to be addressed by the city council. I'm seeing how do I sign up to join this meeting on the 14th. I'm going to drop one more time. I'm going to drop our landing page, all about this 15 mile per hour e-bike rule, which has all the information about how to get involved in the hearing. And let me take a look and see if there's some other questions. Yes. Okay. Here's a question about whether this rule is for e-bikes or for all bikes. Nina, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this proposed rule by the city only pertains to e-bikes.
Yes, e-bikes and certain other e-micromobility devices. They're outlined in the rule text itself as well.
Any other questions about Monday's hearing or the format of the hearing or what to expect or what to write?
Sure, I can offer a little bit more context on like how the hearing works in addition to what Charlie outlined a little before. So again, if you've attended like a city council hearing where it's like the Committee of Transportation and Infrastructure, and there's testimony from agencies and questions from council members, and then there's like a very long wait to offer your public comment. This is nothing like that. This is virtual only. You'll either sign into a Zoom like this, or you'll dial in the phone number. All of those are available on the public rule comment website, which is linked in the page that we've set up. You'll log on to that, and then it's very instantaneous. There will be a staff member from the regulatory teams who will call your name or your phone number. You will have like a set couple of minutes to speak, and like those meetings are like solely just for public comment. It is scheduled from 10 to 11:30 a.m. And from my experience, it's been they get through public comment in a pretty quick clip. I think the fact that y'all are able to submit comment through the page itself and also offer emails. A lot of folks will submit their opinion that way, but it's great to turn out at that Zoom hearing itself. For some that have a lot of public interest, they're often live streams, so you can like watch along, but typically the only way to follow along is to log on to the meeting yourself. Do you have any other questions from folks?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Sean. Sean's asking, why do we need companies like DoorDash in NYC? When I grew up, each local restaurant had someone on a bike who traveled to the customer on a traditional bike. DoorDash exploits delivery workers and restaurants. I mean, this is absolutely true. I remember, growing up here, you just call the restaurant in your neighborhood and order something directly. Now there is a middleman. There is an app that is, based on the other side of the country, making profits off of trying to get that meal to you, in way shorter a period of time than is actually feasible for the worker or than is safe for the worker and other people on the street. And I think that's a key reason why we absolutely need the city council to pass e-bike regulations, which would be, along with street safety infrastructure changes, those would be two real ways to address this very real issue, right? A 15 mile per hour arbitrary e-bike speed limit, that's a fake solution, right? And that's why we're against it. It actually doesn't even address the root cause, which is that these companies are requiring their workers to operate at unsafe speeds. We have, workplace safety laws uh, in basically every other industry, right? But this is a new industry, so far it's gone completely unregulated, and that's why we actually have to, the city council has to take up this task. I think I'm seeing a question about speed limit. Yeah, do you support speed limit for e-bikes and acoustic bikes? I think at TA we support a universal 20 mile per hour speed limit, no matter whether you're on an acoustic bike, whether you're on an electric bike, um, whether you're operating a 5,000 pound SUV, right? I think we've all had the experience of being on a bike and having someone in a huge car behind us honking at us and coming way too close to us because they're mad that the person on the bike in front of them is a lot slower than them, right? And that is a recipe for road rage, right? So everybody should have the same speed limit. It's going to make everyone a lot safer. Creating two different classes of speed limits is actually going to put more people in danger. Yeah, I think we actually have a pretty cool report that I will drop in the chat, um, which is all about a regulatory framework to rein in these destructive practices of the same day delivery app companies. I think kind of the core issue here is that you know this city is seeking a shortcut, right, to solving this issue. And that's why they're proposing um, this rule change. But ultimately, this shortcut is not going to solve the root of the problem. And it's not based in any sort of data. And so that's why we're proposing alternate solutions, primarily app regulation and street safety redesigns.
Yeah, someone asked about the rationale with the speed limit reduction, and there really isn't one. I mean, the 15 miles per hour is um, an arbitrary number that's been pulled out. So there really isn't much research behind it or data or any reason why 15 miles per hour is chosen. So I think it was Diana who asked earlier, and we agree that it is arbitrary.
I'm seeing a really interesting point about Sammy's law, right? So Enrique's pointing out that it's hypocritical for the city to use Sammy's law as a justification to implement a 15 mile per hour speed limit for bikes, while the city is not implementing Sammy's law for cars, right? And that's a really crucial point. I think that's something people can feel free to mention in their comment, um, because Sammy's law was meant to stop car drivers from killing people, right? It allows speed limits to be lowered to 20 miles per hour on streets in New York City, right? So Mayor Adams is misusing Sammy's law to justify lowering the speed limit of e-bikes instead of cars down to 15 miles per hour, which is actually lower than the law even allows for cars. The law allows the speed limit for cars to be lowered down to 20 miles per hour. So, in multiple respects, that justification doesn't make any sense. It's questionably legal. The mayor is essentially disregarding the law's intent to save lives that are being lost to car crashes, right? And he's just totally twisting the law to use for his own purposes, right? While he's actually failing to implement the law on more than 1% of New York City streets, leaving New Yorkers at risk of being killed by cars. Absolutely. I think it's incredibly frustrating. Sandra is saying it's insulting to Sammy's family and those of us whose loved ones have also been killed by drivers and who advocated for Sammy's law. This is something that a lot of people fought for many years, right? For the ability, for New York's ability to lower this speed limit for cars to 20 miles per hour. And the city hasn't done barely anything to actually make that a reality. And now they're twisting that ability to crack down on bikes. I mean, it's incredibly frustrating and it's insulting. Absolutely. I'm seeing questions about a critical mass style bike protest. I know this is something TA actually participated in, I believe it was last month or the month before, um, during this kind of initial bike criminalization crackdown. I am actually, not sure whether more of those protests are being planned, but that's a very good question. I'm seeing a question from Dustin. What's the next step after the hearing? When will we know the results or outcome? And I think, Nina, you might be best equipped to answer that.
Yes, so Philip, correct me if I'm wrong on the timeline here, given that this might be a special case, but they announced it and then had 30 days of at least 30 days of public comment. So it was announced back in June, now to July. And then I believe there's a timeline of 60 days post rule in which any changes will be made. But I believe there are some instances where they are able to like invoke certain processes to make changes faster. But I think there is a timeline where they review everybody's public comments, hopefully listen to the concerns that are validly being raised by many hundreds of people throughout this process. And then they will typically make another announcement of, okay, here is what the like we will either pull back on this rule, we have amended the rule based off of public comments, and it is now adopted and will be enacted at X amount of time. But it's like slightly different than a piece of legislation, for example. It's all done through like the regulatory system where it gets turned over to the agency for review, compiling, and any final changes made. Pass to Philip if he has any amendments to what I just said.
Nope, Nina, you got that exactly right. So there'll be a 60-day internal review. So Monday is the one and only chance for the public to make their voice heard and to submit your comments by Monday. That's the only chance. After that, it gets turned over to that internal process for 60 days before the final decision is announced.
I'm seeing another kind of logistical question about the hearing process, which is that the hearing is scheduled for 1 hour. So do we know if they will continue until all witnesses are heard, or will they cut off testimony after an hour? City council hearings can take hours. Um, that's a great question. Nina or Philip, do you know the answer to that?
In my experience, I've um, witnessed and attended many real hearings, and typically they are completed before like saying like they're normally set for an hour. So for this one, they give an extra half hour. But I believe that they will allow everybody who is online to speak and call in order, but it's all virtual. So it's likely they will start with the folks who are on the Zoom and then move over to the folks who have called in um, on their phone. So I would say you would want to join in that first like half hour 45 minutes if we're trying to like gauge how many people are going to sign on immediately to want to be heard in the hearing itself. I wouldn't sign on at like 11:29 for example. Like it's not like they will remain on the line in case people want to hop in, but I think it's better to sign on, be heard, and get in like the virtual queue, so to speak.
And one last time, in case it's getting lost in the chat above, I'm putting our landing page all about this issue, transalt.org/ebike-rule, which has, you know, all the information about this rule change, some possible talking points, and the button for you to actually send your comment. Okay, I think unless Philip or Nina, unless you have anything more to add, I think we can close this out. I want to thank everybody for attending this. You know, this is a real opportunity for us to kind of weigh in and possibly, you know, change an outcome here. And I really appreciate all of you, you know, dedicating some time this evening to learning more about this issue and getting prepped to weigh in on it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.